Thank you, Liz. I knew that when I came to Swarthmore College that I would have brilliant, accomplished, interesting colleagues. What I didn't know is that I would get a sister. It's a pleasure to be here with you. In some sense, this is my graduation too, and I think of you as my classmates. And I appreciate very much the honor of giving this talk, of being invited to give this talk. But I have to admit something to you. I have only been to one other baccalaureate service. And so when President Smith extended the invitation from the honorary degree committee, I was a little bit alarmed. And so I turned to Wikipedia to find out what a baccalaureate talk was supposed to be. So it started off pretty well. What it said was, it's a farewell address, okay, given to a graduating class, okay, in the form of a sermon. Not so okay. Here's the problem is that I am not religious, and I'm not prone to giving sermons. So I was a little bit stymied, but then I realized I have a huge advantage over most speakers, and that is that I know you. I know Swarthmore students. I have taught you, and I have taught those that have preceded you in the past 33 years. And so what I know is I know what happens after graduation, and that is that you guys are going to go on to lead fruitful, interesting lives. Your creativity, your hard work, your passion may not keep you dry, but it is going to lead you to do remarkable things. You guys care about other people, and you're going to make the world better. And I and the rest of the faculty all are going to take pride in your efforts and your accomplishments. Therefore, you don't need a sermon from me. You're going to do great things. But I do want to support your efforts by suggesting a means by which you might restore yourselves in face of the coming challenges. As you came in the amphitheater today, you passed a small building. And outside that building, there's a stone bench. And carved into that bench are the words, "Nature never did betray the heart that loved her." When I first read that, more than 30 years ago, I was not steeped in the liberal arts tradition in the way that you are. And so I read it in a very literal and simplistic way. And I did not agree with it. The first part that bothers me is that nature is being represented as female. So from the biological perspective, this makes no sense. There's sort of no point in female without male. In addition to that, I work on a number of organisms, and we're surrounded by a number of organisms that are simultaneously male and female. And so only specifying the female seems to be leaving something out. So you might know about hermaphrodites, but do you know about organisms that have 3 sexes? Oh my goodness. So 3 sexes. There are harvester seed ants who are famous because they have 3 sexes. A successful colony is made up in part of the female and 2 different kinds of males. These 2 different kinds of males are so different that they could be genetically distinct species. And so what happens there is that the females mated to both of them, the progeny of one of them, this is nature, the progeny of one of them is leads to the workers in the colony, and the progeny of the others develops into the young queens. The colony cannot be successful without all 3 parents. So if 3 seems like not enough, how about 7? If we were ciliate protozoans in the crumb at the bottom of the hill, we would have 7 different mating types, sort of a mix-and-match arrangement. Okay, how about 1,000? Fungi. There's a fungus that has 28,000 mating types. Okay, so clearly female does not cover the gamut. And that's if we're only considering the biological world. What about the physical world? What about the geology? What about the chemistry? What about the stars? What about the weather? Okay? Not female. Okay. Okay, so maybe that's a small detail, sort of just an artistic license in this statement. But there's the sense of the statement, nature never did betray the heart that loved her. This sort of implies that nature cares about you and that if you love her, she's going to make a deal. It's not true. And I have a fundamental question, which is, what about parasites? Okay. Now, you might think that I'm picking nits here, but parasitism is the most common lifestyle amongst organisms. Any sort of chipmunk or jellyfish or porcini mushroom or frog or tulip tree or bacterium has parasites. And those parasites have parasites. Just layers and layers of betrayal. So unlike majestic lions or awesome cheetahs or powerful grizzly bears that would merely eat us, we characterize parasites as insidious. They take little bites. They sip only a little blood. They might take a few gametes. They steal nutrients. But the most alarming thing they do is they change the behavior of their hosts. Okay, what am I talking about? Okay, I'm going to give you one of my favorite examples. And it is called the lancet liver fluke. The lancet liver fluke, the adults, which by the way are hermaphroditic, live in the bile ducts of sheep. The problem is that the juveniles that are going to develop into those adults, they live in ants. And so the big problem is, how do we get from the ants into the or into the sheep? So if I had two ants here, one was infected and the other was not, you would not be able to tell them apart. During the day, both of them go about their seed harvesting behavior. They interact with other ants. But then what happens at sunset is that the healthy ants, the ants without parasites, join their siblings and go back down into the ant nest. On the other hand, the ants that harbor the parasites, the juvenile parasites, they have this completely weird behavior. They search around, they find a grass blade, they crawl up to the tip of the grass blade, and they lock their jaws on the tip of the grass blade. And they stay there overnight, where they are vulnerable to grazing animals, for instance, sheep. If they don't get eaten in a given night, they crawl back down the grass blade, go about their ant business until the next sunset, where once again they are compelled to go up the grass blade into a position where they are, where it is an advantage to the worms, but not to the ants. Okay, so while what I've told you is true, typifying parasites as insidious and betraying is actually a pretty limited viewpoint. If you think about it, their real crime is that they are small and effective. I don't understand why we credit more obviously dangerous beasts, so like majestic lions and awesome cheetahs and powerful grizzly bears, with noble attributes. Shouldn't we admire small and effective over large and obvious? Okay. You also probably realize that parasites and their hosts are locked in an evolutionary arms race. And this means that for an internal parasite to succeed, it must avoid or overcome the immune system of its host. One way it does this is by releasing chemicals that depress inflammation. Now, it turns out that in many autoimmune diseases, patients suffer from the effects of overblown inflammation. In some cases, these people are now being treated with anti-inflammatory chemicals produced by parasites. And in some cases, the treatment is to actually introduce live parasites into patients, and it causes a decrease in the inflammation and a reduction of the symptoms. So exactly who is using who in this scenario? Now, how does this tie back to nature never did betray the heart that loved her? And by the way, I love her and we're being betrayed. Close attention to these parasites, maybe even thinking about them in a creepy kind of way where they're in your body, does take you out of your humdrum worries. By watching the nature and by attending to it, we can achieve a different perspective. Now, the words, "nature never did betray the heart that loved her," are lines written by William Wordsworth in 1798 as part of his poem, Lines Written a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey. And in it, he argues that nature, with its beauty, order, intricacy, and diversity, can take us out of ourselves. Its very otherliness allows us to reframe our perspectives and become refreshed. Are you refreshed now? Yeah, a little, okay. Now, there's a very similar poem, or one with similar sentiment, from Wendell Berry called The Peace of Wild Things. And this is one of my favorite poems. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water and feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. This is the core of my message to you. And so, even though it's raining, I'm going to read it to you again. This is The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair in the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life or my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Now, the ceremonies of this weekend are designed to mark your profound achievements. And at the same time, they herald many changes that are coming to your lives, not all of which are going to be welcome or easy or comfortable. Right now, I know that there are dads out there who are worried about how they're going to get all the stuff in the car. And there are moms who are wondering a little bit about what it's going to be like to be taking in an adult child into the natal home. There are seniors here who don't yet quite know what they're doing, and they're worried about that. And there are seniors who know exactly what they're doing, and they're worried about that. So I want you to remember that you can take a break and refresh yourself by noticing the nature around you. I want you to start now by really noticing this amphitheater made of natural elements. The most stunning part of it to me are these tulip trees that you see around you here. These tulip trees were planted the better part of a century ago, and yet they are young for their species. The species grows to several hundred years. They were picked because this species is the tallest tree in eastern North America. And it has very deep roots, which it would need to have in order to hold up those tall trunks. And it also has these spreading limbs that gives us an emerald canopy. If we could fly up there, if I could take you on a field trip to the top of these trees, you'd see why they're called tulip trees. They have flowers that are shaped somewhat like the shape of tulips, but kind of like psychedelic tulips. The petals, which are at your feet, are orange and yellow and green. And these flowers produce a prodigious amount of nectar. And the idea is that they are drawing pollinators that normally would be at much lower levels up into the canopy. The bees make honey from this nectar, and that honey is prized by bakers for its particularly rich flavor. Okay, we're nestled in the Crum Woods, and we are surrounded by wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. And so I want to take a moment of silence, even though you're getting wet. And I want, in this silence, for you to take a deep breath, and I want you to try to quiet for just a few seconds that internal dialogue while you focus on some natural element. Thank you. And good luck, classmates.